It was late at night when James first stumbled upon the strange channel. It wasn't listed on the guide, and the static screen flickered before revealing a live broadcast. A TV show, or perhaps a strange reality, James couldn't tell. He leaned closer to the screen, eyes squinting as a scene unfolded. The camera zoomed in on a kitchen, his kitchen, the very same one he had just cleaned hours earlier. He could hear the faint sound of his own footsteps from the hallway, the soft hum of his fridge, and the distant sound of the clock ticking. It was his life, but something was off. In the show, James stood by the kitchen counter, holding a cup of coffee, looking out the window. He was talking to someone. He couldn't place the face, but it was definitely someone he knew. A future conversation, a future moment. He could feel his heart race. He reached for the remote, thinking it was some sort of trick, a glitch. But the screen didn't change, it only showing him the future. A few days passed, and every night, James found himself sitting in front of the TV, waiting for a glimpse of the future. The channel had become an obsession. What started as small moments, like his coffee cup tipping over at just the right moment, or hearing a phone call ring before it even started, was evolving into something bigger, something that felt too real to be a coincidence. But tonight, something changed. The screen flickered to life, revealing his own living room. It was just as he remembered it, dimly lit by the soft glow of the table lamp. But then, the woman appeared again. The same woman with the same piercing smile, only this time she was holding something in her hand, an envelope. James watched in shock as she walked up to him, her eyes locking onto his as she handed it over. His breath caught in his throat. It felt too real, too familiar. He could almost feel the weight of the envelope in his hands, the texture of the paper, the way it crinkled slightly as she placed it into his palm. But no, it couldn't be real. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. "Who is she?" James whispered, leaning closer to the screen. His heartbeat raced as he heard the soft rustle of papers coming from the TV. He grabbed his phone, desperate to call someone, anyone. But the second he reached for the screen, the woman's smile widened, exactly as it had in the show. She was looking at him. She was looking at him, and it felt like she could see him, feel his presence in the room with her. His hand trembled as he hovered over his phone. "Is this real?" he muttered, as his pulse quickened. He had to know. The camera on the TV zoomed in on the envelope. The words on it were blurred, unreadable. But he knew one thing for sure. This was no ordinary show. This was a preview of what was coming, and the next scene was already unfolding around him. James couldn't shake the feeling that the TV show was no longer just a passive experience. It had become a force, pulling him in deeper, taking control of his actions. Every night the same show aired. Every night more of the future was revealed to him. The envelope from the woman, the one from the last episode, was now in his hands, just like he had seen. Inside there was a letter. The letter was short. "Meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. You'll understand everything." He read it over and over, his mind racing. Who was she? How could this be happening? But as he sat there staring at the words, something began to shift inside him. A thought lingered at the edge of his mind. What if he could change the future? The show wasn't just predicting events anymore, it was showing him how to manipulate them. The following day, James found himself pacing in his apartment, the hours dragging on as he waited for the clock to reach 8 p.m. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to face whatever was waiting for him. But his curiosity, his obsession, had grown too powerful to resist. At exactly 8 his phone rang. It was the woman from the show. He froze. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. Her voice was calm, too calm, as if she had known this moment would come. "You're ready," she said softly. "Come outside." His heart was racing. Everything inside him screamed to stay put, to ignore the call, but his feet moved on their own. The front door creaked as he stepped outside, and the cold night air hit his face. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so. He followed the familiar path shown in the show, walking as if guided by an invisible force. It felt like the world around him was holding its breath, waiting for him to reach his destination. There in the distance, a figure stood under the dim streetlight. The woman. She smiled, and as the final seconds of the show flashed before his eyes, he realized something. He had seen this moment before. James felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as he approached the woman. The moment felt rehearsed, too precise. The street was still, too still. He had seen it all before, but this time Something was different. The woman's smile didn't feel like a greeting anymore. It felt like a warning. "You came," she said, her voice smooth, almost too serene. Her eyes locked onto his, as though she had been waiting for this moment for an eternity. "I knew you would." He opened his mouth to speak, to ask her who she was, what was happening, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. The air around him felt heavier with every step, as though the world itself was closing in on him. "Are you ready to change everything?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper now, yet it echoed in his mind. James hesitated. Could he really change the future? Could he alter the course of events he had already seen unfold? Every night, he had watched as the show predicted what would happen next in his life, and every night those predictions had come true. But now, standing before her, he felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to jump into the unknown. I don't know," James stammered, looking at the envelope still clutched tightly in his hand. The woman's smile widened, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "The future isn't set, James. You have the power to control it, to make your own choices. But remember, every choice comes with a cost." The last part of her sentence hung in the air like a dark omen, and James could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. He wanted to back away, to run back to the safety of his apartment, but his legs wouldn't move. He had to know more. He had to know if he could manipulate the future. The woman reached out, her fingers brushing against his wrist. "Follow me," she said. "It's time to see the consequences of your actions." And just like that, the world around him began to shift. As the woman led him down the dark street, the world around them seemed to warp. The air was thick, heavy, as though reality itself was bending with each step they took. James felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as though he had walked this path 1,000 times before, but it was different now. Everything was sharper, more vivid, like the lines of his reality were starting to blur. "Do you see it?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. "This is what happens when you try to control fate." Ahead of him, the street stretched on forever, but it didn't feel right. The buildings, the lampposts, even the cracks in the pavement seemed distorted, as if they were not part of the world he knew. It was like a nightmare he couldn't escape. He reached out to touch a streetlight, but his hand passed through it. The light flickered and vanished into thin air like a mirage. Panic surged through him. "What's happening? This isn't real. This can't be real," he shouted, trying to make sense of the chaos around him. The woman didn't respond immediately. She just watched him, her expression unreadable. Then, with a chilling calmness, she spoke. "This is the price, James. You wanted to change the future, but when you alter one thing, everything else falls apart. The future is a fragile thing. Manipulate it, and you lose control of everything. The TV wasn't just showing you the future, it was showing you the path to your own undoing." James's heart pounded in his chest as he looked around. He had tried to control the future, to make the impossible real. But now, as he stood in this twisted, distorted version of his world, he realized just how much he had lost. The woman's smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet finality. "The future is not meant to be controlled. Now you will live with the consequences." James turned to face her, but she was already gone, fading into the darkness, leaving him alone in this fractured reality. The screen of his phone flickered to life for the final time. One last message from the show he had watched for so long. "You can never escape the future you've created." With that, the world around him shattered, and the screen went black. Did James lose control of his reality forever? If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share it with your friends. Keep exploring the unknown with us. Subscribe now for more mind-bending stories. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching, and remember, the future is always just around the corner, waiting to surprise you.